I will just kind of run through some things. And for those of you that were at the 4th and 5th Club just a week ago, I apologize if I repeat myself. You'll just have to maybe hear the message again, but I'll try and add some new stuff to that as well. Charles County's good. You know, it's a great county. I don't regret for a moment that I made the decision to not run for the House of Delegates again, and then I decided to run for this position, not for a moment. In fact, people ask me all the time, do you miss Annapolis? And I don't at all. I am on the MACO, which is the Maryland Association of Counties. They have a legislative committee. I'm on that legislative committee, and so I go up every week for that to hear what pieces of legislation are being put forth that would have an impact on counties. And I enjoy that very much, but I always really enjoy getting back in my car and coming home every week. And so it was a good decision to do that. I feel very grateful that I was able to be successful to serve in this role. We've made some changes. I'm going to give you some overviews, but an overview of some of the things, and but then we'll have opportunities for you to ask questions if there's something of particular interest to you. We immediately decided that one of the things that we would do differently, I know you've heard about it and read about it, is to change the way that we do the vice president on the Board of Commissioners. And that is one that gets rotated. So first year, every year we'll have a new vice president. And we're doing it by districts. I want you to know what overrides a lot of the things that I'm trying to do. I'm really trying to depoliticize our government, trying to make it just fair. And that was one of the ways I think to start that out, was to say, you know, first of all, I believe my role, and I believe the role of anybody in this position, is to help all the county commissioners be successful. This isn't about this job. It isn't about this position. It's certainly not about me. It really is to be able to grow and to support people to be good leaders. Because I'm always very clear that I'm simply passing through. And what you leave behind is a great indicator of the kind of job you've done. And so I thought this was a good way to get every county commissioner an opportunity to be in a leadership role through their 4-year term. And I can't tell you, it happens once in a while I do something that really works. Because, as it turns out, we did it just by district, Commissioner Robinson is my vice president. And I can't tell you how that's just been terrific. With him having been there for the last 4 years, he has such a wealth of knowledge. And I can tell you, Commissioner Davis as well, they really do help me in terms of kind of backfilling a lot of the issues that we're dealing with. Because as you can imagine, much of what we're dealing with today is stuff that has been left over not only from this past administration, but even before that. So it's been incredibly helpful to have him to help me as we go through these things. So that seems to be working out very well. And actually, you know, we added even another step to that. I don't know how much of it people know or gets in the paper, but I leave it open to people. This is not a must. If anybody chooses not to serve, that's certainly their option to do that. And the way to replace that person, as I told them, will be by lottery. It's not going to be, I don't want any people jockeying to get that position. I don't want to be in the middle of that. I don't want any discourse between commissioners. And so if someone decides they don't want to serve in that role, it's going to be by lottery. And that's just the way to do it. It's not, so it gets away from all of the, you know, kind of, excuse me, internal issues. So we put that in place right away. Very pleased with that. As you all know, we made some changes in some of the folks that have been in county government. We are very close to getting a new county administrator. Very close. Keep your fingers crossed. It's been a search, but we're committed to getting someone in who is professional, smart, and really gets it and knows how to run government. And so we hope to have that position filled very soon. Once that person's on board, of course, it would be that person's responsibility then to fill other positions. We still have an opening for a director of human resources. That's been open for like 14 or 15 months. It hasn't been filled. We do have an acting person who's doing a wonderful job, but that needs to be filled. We also have a need for a director of economic development, and we have a need for a county attorney as well. So we are, but we're going to get there, and we just need to get our county administrator in place. And as I said, we're very close to that, and that gets pretty exciting. And part of the reason for that, and I think it's my intention to kind of to change a little bit about the structure of government, in the sense that I really believe that it is the position, that is the responsibility of the Board of Commissioners, is that we set policy. That, I believe, is our job. The county administrator's job is to run the government under our policy decision. I don't believe it's our responsibility to run government. And so the thing that we did the day after we were sworn in is that I rewrote and we adopted kind of a new way of doing county government, so that all of our employees, we have a number of directors. The way it's been in the past, those directors have had 5 bosses. They've had 4, they've had 6 actually. They've had 5 county commissioners and a county administrator. So it's always very difficult about, who do you take direction from and so forth. So we've restructured our government so that they will have one boss, which is our county administrator. And that county administrator will work with our directors and so forth. And it doesn't mean that obviously we can't, communicate and work with our directors, but we need to do that through one person so that our directors know exactly what their expectations are and how to do their jobs well. And so that is a little bit of a change in terms of our structure that we have in place right now. So I feel really good about that. I feel very confident about that. I'm one that believes that, when the best way that people work is when they're in a government in a situation where there's trust, where they understand what they're supposed to do, and then get out of the way and let them do their job. And if they're not doing their job the way we would like it, then we work with them to help them be a better employee. And so we're kind of trying to change that a little bit in county government. So those things have been taking place. I know you're reading all sorts of things in the newspaper. I think the latest one was about our town hall decision to do town halls instead of, government's interesting. It moves kind of slowly. I brought that up, and they said, oh, well, we have to do some kind of something because it used to be called a forum. I thought, well, you mean we just can't call it? Oh no, we got to go through all this. So they said, fine, whatever. But we did that because I really believed, and obviously so does the Board of County Commissioners, is that a couple of things. Number one, I thought it's important to go out instead of always having people having to come to La Plata, which is not always easy for everybody. That we need to get out into the community, and so that was one of the first criteria for making that happen. Secondly, these are going to be different, different than the way they used to be. The way they used to be is that they would have these forums. People would come to the county government building, and it would be the 5 commissioners. And so what we're doing differently now is that we're going to have all of our directors with us. So we're going to have our county administrator with us, we're going to have all of our directors with us, we'll have the county attorney with us. That way, if someone asks a question of us that we don't have an answer to, we can refer to one of our directors. And so that's a much more immediate response, and it's much more responsive, I think, to our constituents and to residents at that time. And besides that, I look at it as a learning opportunity for me, but as well as the other commissioners, because that's when you hear how things are done. And it makes us better in terms of our responding to our constituents, and I think it makes it better government. So I know the paper had some issues. I don't know why they use the word transparency. I don't think you can get more transparent than that, where you actually see and hear those answers coming from that. So those are coming up. Actually, we have one next week. It's going to be, and we're doing it again just by districts, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll do one each quarter. We'll be doing the next one is going to be at the Newburgh Firehouse. It's on the 24th, I believe. And that was another opportunity I felt to give each commissioner an opportunity to have an opportunity to show leadership, because each district will be hosted by that commissioner. It's not going to be hosted by me. So in District 1, it will be hosted by Commissioner Robinson. District 2 will be Commissioner Davis, and so forth. And so it gives each person that opportunity to run those meetings and to be responsive, to be there for their constituents as well. So those are coming up. It does not, by the way, preclude any commissioner from holding any kind of town hall meeting that they want. And they do. I know we have 2 commissioners that meet on a pretty regular basis with their constituents. And so individuals can certainly still do that. So that, that's been happening. Obviously, we're, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but we're now starting to get into the budget season. And that is going to be difficult, I will tell you. Government's like family. You don't get to pick them. You inherit. You have to live with what you have. And so, and we've inherited some issues, and we've inherited some stuff, and but we're going to work on that. And we are certainly going to look at all sorts of ways to keep our budget intact. And of course, none of us has an interest or any kind of appetite whatsoever to raise taxes. That's not. I've never been one to look at that as the place you start. My philosophy is that should be the last thing you do. You must look at other ways first. How do we cut? Where do we combine things and so forth? And so we're going to be looking at that very carefully. We did something recently, and I think it's a little bit different, just to tell you how this administration is looking at things in a different perspective. And I won't go into all the details, but just this week, well, we had a meeting. It's a public meeting. You'll see it if you watch this on TV. There's something about school allocations. And so what happens is twice a year, they come before us and they say, we want you to approve X number of seats that can go into, that these developers can have so that they can go forward. And what we as a board are looking at is to say, well, wait a minute. That doesn't sound like a big number, and it usually isn't a big number. But what's not been taken into consideration in the past is all of the developments that have been approved and already have allocations and are sitting there, at any time can decide to develop. Now all of a sudden, we do have overcrowding, so all those allocations get added on. So we're going to look at that a little bit differently now. In fact, we asked for it. We asked to be able to see what's in the pipeline. Before we, maybe we give you another 10 seats or 15 seats. But if there were already 200 of them, let's say, in the pipeline, now all of a sudden you're talking, and if people start to develop, then all of a sudden you aren't talking about a problem. So we're really going to look at the bigger picture and not piecemeal, because I think that's really important. And people asked for that during the campaign. People are concerned about the schools and so forth. And by the way, this is another thing. We are really committed in working with our partners, which is the Board of Education. That was another thing that made the paper. They were upset because we had a retreat and it was closed. That was a conscious decision to keep that closed. And the reason for that is, we made it very clear, we weren't doing policy in that. We knew and we know that we're going to be in budget discussions with them soon. And they're asking for more money, obviously, than they did before. And so those can be difficult. And so we felt we wanted to be proactive. And we wanted to sit down with new members. They have 5 new members. We have 2 members on our board. And so we felt this was just a great opportunity to be able to sit down and get to know each other. Because if you get to know each other, and you get to understand them and each other, and you get to understand what our beliefs are and so forth, then when you get into negotiations, you have some sense of where people are coming from. That's very different than the way it's often done, which is people tend to judge on what they believe are people's motivations, and that's just not useful. That doesn't help. So we use that as an opportunity to start to build that relationship. And frankly, it's worked. I mean, even when at the last 2, this week, and I believe it was last week, or no, week before that, during our open meeting, when our staff came before us on school allocations, Board of Education members were there, the superintendent was there. So we're really building a really wonderful opportunities for us to work together. And we were all very clear, very, very clear that we were using, there's no policy going on there. And we also made a conscious decision to hire a facilitator who was outside the county, had no association with anybody, so there couldn't be any misunderstanding about that. We've also had a wonderful briefing with the Sheriff's Department because we want to build that relationship as well. And many of you may or may not know, but there's a piece of legislation that went in this year about collective bargaining with the Fraternal Order of Police and the Sheriff's Office. That bill was withdrawn. They weren't really happy with me, and even though some things, and certainly when we're talking about land acquisition, legal issues, or personnel issues, those are in closed session. Even though those may be unanimous, it's me, and that's okay. But the fact of the matter is, what is necessary is sometimes you just have to stop and take a breath and now get back on track. So I've met with the FOP. We've committed to working over the summer to see if we can come up with a piece of legislation that everybody can live with, and not just something that just gets put out there. So we're working well with them. We're working well with the Sheriff's Department, and we're going to do it different. We're going to do it differently with the legislation next year, different than it was this past year. I think there were like 17 or 18 pieces of legislation that the previous board sent on up to Annapolis. Many of those bills have been withdrawn, have gotten unfavorable reports and so forth. So we're going to do a better job of vetting those, getting them done much earlier and so forth. So I think we'll have it'll be a much smoother kind of process up there. It has been an advantage, actually, that I've been at the state level and come back, because believe it or not, we need the state. We really need the state, and we need to start learning to work better with the state. And even though we have a Republican governor, and I said it yesterday in the meeting, I and everybody of course agreed with that, we're inviting him down. We want him to be in our county. It doesn't matter to me about his party affiliation at this point, to be honest with you. He is our governor. He's going to be there for the next, for 4 years. It's important that Charles County invites him, works with the state, because if we're going to get our fair share, we have to develop those relationships. So of course the entire board agreed to that. We're going to start working with him. Our directive was reach out to the governor, ask the governor what he would like to see, because when he gets to Charles County and he sees what's here, he's going to be so stuck. I'm telling you, people don't know really the wonderful things we have in Charles County. And you're going to hear this young man talk in a minute about the kind of young people that we have in our schools and what we have to offer. And he's going to look at our schools, and he's going to look at our libraries, and he's going to look at, I could just go on and on, all the things we have to offer here. So we're committed, I'm committed to building that relationship with him. And the good news is, this is so wonderful. I happened to be downtown Saturday. I was downtown, and I was on Connecticut Avenue, and I was turning the corner, and here's a colleague of mine from the legislature who lost. He's crossing the street. I honk. I'm in the middle of the street. We're shaking hands through the window. He works for Governor Hogan. So, and he's a Democrat, and he's a very progressive Democrat. And I thought, I don't know how that happened, but the good news is we have relationships already built. So there was an advantage. I know people were like, kind of doing it backwards. I never saw it that way. But actually, it's an opportunity for us to build our relationships with the state. And frankly, they want us to do that. During MACO, this conference that was held during the winter, Commissioner Robinson and myself had a meeting, reached out to the chair of the Prince George's County Council, Mel Franklin, and his vice chair, and the four of us sat down and we committed to work with each other. We're going to work with our neighbors. We need our neighbors. We need to work with Prince George's County. Transportation problems that we have in Charles County are their problems, and their problems are ours. And Charles County can no longer operate within its own boundaries. And so we now have a relationship with them. We're going to meet with them and start to build that relationship with Prince George's County. Every month I meet with the two presidents, or the president from St. Mary's and Calvert. The three of us sit down every month. And we talk about our counties, and we talk about what kinds of things we can do to help each other. Just recently, the Tri-County Council made their #1 priority upgrading, rebuilding, or replacing the Johnson Bridge that goes from Calvert to St. Mary's, depending which direction you're going. It goes both ways. We support that. That's not in our county, but it's important to all of us. The second priority is 301 and Route 5, and they're supporting us. So we've got to do that. So it's important that I meet with them, that the three of us sit down every month. I've also started something else, and that is I sit down every month with the two mayors in Charles County, the mayor from Indian Head and the mayor from La Plata. because even though they're independent in some ways, they are part of Charles County, and we share some of the same problems. So building those relationships and opening those up, I think, will really benefit the county. So we're doing some really wonderful things to tell you that we have a good board. You know, we have differences in terms of kind of how the way we see things, but those are not, and that's healthy. And I don't know, I am so pleased, and I thank them every Tuesday when we're done for the conversation, the discussions that we have. Because even though we may be differing, it really helps to enrich the kind of decisions that we, enriches us so that we have good decisions when we're done. So those are some of the things, we're facing. We've got big projects ahead of us. We've got big things that we've got to pay attention to, and we will. But the biggest thing right now, I'm told, I go in every day, I'm there every day, almost every day, the budget's not good, you're not going to like what we tell you, and that's going to be tough, and I'm sure it will, but we'll get through it and we'll do the best we can, and understand that this year, a lot of what we're dealing with is stuff that's been kind of left over, but I can promise you this, that as we do this, there's not going to be just staff telling us and we rubber stamp. This is a very, very thoughtful board. You just need to watch this on channel 10 or whatever it is once in a while, and just listen to some of the questions people are asking. They're really paying attention. It's really very exciting for me to have that kind of an active board that's really asking some hard questions. And by the way, we've met with our directors. We're doing something different with them too, which will help all this process. In the past, just so you know, the county commissioners would sit down with the goals, and then the county commissioners would come up with all the objectives. And so I asked to do it differently. I said that these directors are the people that do the work every day, and they're wonderful. We have an incredible staff in Charles County. I cannot tell you how committed and dedicated the staff is in Charles County. They're terrific. But I said, let them come up with the goals, and let them come up with realistic objectives, because I honestly don't know what it takes. Every day, I don't know what their resources are. I don't know what their staffing is. I don't know what their time frame is. None of us do. So just let them come up with that. So we kind of flipped that. They love the idea, because they're going to come back to us with some realistic goals, and then work with us, and we can then try things to support them on that. And I think by doing it that way, this whole process of going through the budget and how we move forward will be a much more cooperative, collaborative effort rather than, approaches to that. So that's kind of where we are. I'm incredibly excited about the county. It's a great county, and I'm just excited about the potential that we have to become not only bring the pride and stuff back to Charles County, but also to extend that and to really be involved in the state and to have an active role in our state, because we need that, and we're headed towards that. So that's just kind of an overview of things, but I'm very happy to try, and if you have any particular questions or specific issues or concerns, yes?
Charles County is fortunate to have you at the helm.
Well, thank you. That's not what I was looking for, but you're always so kind.
But I watch the commissioners, I don't come, but on TV, I watch the commissioners' meetings, I watch the planning commission, I watch the board appeals, right? I would love to see someplace either on the county face or someplace where those things are listed instead of having to play hit and miss, right?
It's a good point. I'll find out about that, because you know what? Where I used to live, I didn't have access to any of that, so I never saw any of that, which is a good thing, because I didn't come in with any preconceived ideas around it. But now where I've moved, I can see that, and it's exactly the right. You can click it on, you don't know when it is.
And the other thing, have you thought about an ombudsman for the employees? I worked for the county for almost 20 years, and I was sort of that for many of them, to the point where some people did not love me. But anyways, I think that the response was always, oh, you can come, I have an open door. Well, there's a difference between telling somebody that's sort of on your level your problems than going up to the gods.
Mm-hmm.
Just throw that out
Yeah.
there to consider.
I don't, I'm not aware of any specific position like that. I do think that our HR department kind of acts in that way, sort of, but I understand exactly what you're saying. You have to be careful with that, yeah, yes. That's a
Just
good
throw
point.
that out for
No,
consideration.
Thank you, thanks, yeah, yes, Virginia.
Yeah. Anyway, our President of Commissioners, I think we're so proud of you and what you are doing and what the other commissioners are doing, that all of you are working together and you're reaching out to people, you're informing, you have an open dialogue with so many people, and I think that's very important. But let me mention one thing, and I've said this to a few people, I don't know if you can do anything about it, you know, because my daughter, she lives outside of Chicago. And in her area, they list, this is the amount of your taxes that are going for education, to the police department, to the public libraries. And everybody there is satisfied with everything because they know what's going on. But I don't think we have anything like that in Charles County or Southern Maryland. And a lot of times if people are informed, they kind of go along with everything if they know what's going on. Sort of like what you're doing now, that you're having open dialogue with people and informing them.
You know, Virginia, that,
Comes with a tax bill.
right, it does.
It does run.
But you know what, and you make an excellent point, and we struggle with that. And let me give you a good example. Just recently, we had the director of our community services come and talk to us. And when you hear about all the wonderful things and amazing things that that department does, you know, I hear oftentimes about, well, there's nothing for our kids to do. We need to build a sportsplex, and we need to do that because there's nothing for them to do. And I know there may not be everything for them to do, but when you hear them talk about all the programs that are available in the schools, never mind what the library does. I think in one quarter of this year, the first quarter of, or last quarter of last year, they had something like 90 programs that they were offering just in our public libraries. And then you do that. And we have the same question is, how do you get the word out? It's very difficult. I mean, they produce a brochure or a pamphlet that goes out. And that is what, and I say that every time, tell us what can we do differently. Do we do something on our channel? One of the things I thought of, I had to go to the MVA recently to renew my license.
Oh, good for
And
you.
it takes a while, but you know what? But I pass. The trick is I squint when I do the eye exam, then I can read all the things. But that's true. But anyway, but I'm sitting there and they've got this big TV screen. And it runs all this stuff on there, and I thought, we should be on that, because people have nothing else to do. And you've got to capture a captive audience. And so we're going to look at ways to do that. We have all that information. It's just how do we get it out, and that's hard. It's hard to do that because not everybody gets a newspaper. Not everybody has a TV channels, and everybody has a budget, and you can only produce so many brochures and so forth. It's just how do we do that? So you bring up an excellent point, and we struggle with that because if people knew, if you really knew all the amazing things that are going on in this county, people, I probably wouldn't hear so much about my taxes are too high because we could, well, I probably would still hear that too, but at least I'd be able to say, yeah, but it's going for this and this and this and this and this. And it is, it's going for that. We have great schools, we have, great sheriff's department, it's going to all those kinds of things. But it's a great point, and we are working on that. We try to. Yes?
Two things. I like
Excuse
the
me.
idea that you have the commissioners rotate each year by district. I like that. I think that's a great idea. And the other thing is, what is your opinion on all these new developments? Does it keep building in the county when the schools are already overcrowded and we have over 200 trailers around the schools? I don't like these trailers. I don't think that students have to, well, they've been doing it for years, run in and out in the rain and snow and all from the inside school to the trailer, from this trailer to that trailer. I don't like that.
Yeah.
And I would rather see them add on to the schools than to have all these trailers all around the schools.
Right.
So,
Well, there's several issues, Violet. Number one, I share your concern about trailers, but I share it with another thing, and that's a safety issue. The world we live in today, unfortunately, can be dangerous. And it worries me that some of those kids are in trailers and they don't have the same security that the kids that are in the building do. And that's a great concern to me. Number two, and we started this, is that when you're talking about the building, historically in the county, if you got your building plans through and you got your sites approved and so forth, you can sit on that almost in perpetuity before you ever build it. You can just, so they just stack up and stack up and stack up and stack up. So someone could get something approved in 2004, and here we are 11 years later, and they haven't done one, shovel of dirt, they haven't turned one shovel of dirt, and then they may decide to do it. Well, guess what? The rules are different now, all those years later. It's a different Charles County. So I know the county has started to change that to, in other words, if you haven't started by a certain period of time, then you're off the rolls, and you got to go back. And that does two things. It helps us to manage growth better, and it also gets to the very issue you're talking about, and that's the school seats. Because if these people, they've already been given their seats allocation, and they just hold on to those, and they hold on to those, and they hold on to those. And then they all pile up, and then if it gets to be good and they say it's time to develop, that's where we run into the problem. So we're working on that very issue. In fact, the staff did it. I think a year ago, they changed that policy a bit in our meeting just yesterday. When we talked to the planning growth manager, we said, we're going to revisit that. We think there's maybe a better way to do that. Because historically what happens is they would just give people extensions. So you'd get your plan approved and you might be able to hold that for, I don't remember how many years. And then at the end of those years, if you haven't done anything, they just extend it again, another 4 or 8 years or whatever, and again and again. And that is not fair to the people that are ready to build, and it's not fair to our schools in terms of how do you keep track of how many seats have been allocated. So all that's connected, and we're working on that. So I don't think anybody's ever really taken, I know they haven't taken a look at that before. So we're going to, one of the things about government that I find this to be, this is one of the parts I really enjoy about this, and that's putting all these pieces together. And I said it yesterday in our public meeting. I said, on the school seats, I said, you're asking us to make a decision in a vacuum, when in fact it's a bigger picture. And so we want the big picture. We want to know that when we make this decision, how does it impact all these things around here? And we've got to start thinking smarter and looking at government differently. Because believe it or not, you know this, many of the things that you're seeing today, all these houses being built and stuff like that didn't happen on my watch. And it probably didn't happen on the last watch either. That was probably 12 years ago or whatever, and now it's coming through. So I'm being very careful that whatever I leave behind, or whatever this administration leaves behind, it's going to be, you're going to see a different outcome down the road.
That would be an interesting point. From the time that a development is approved to the time it's actually developed, how long do they have?
Well, up till recently, Jill, it was whenever. They kept giving extensions. There was no. And now that's been changed. The other thing that's come up too, and we're going to take a look at is, because we raised this issue yesterday, is that you might have someone that was approved for 20 homes, let's say, and they've only developed 8. And then they stopped. Well, my thinking about that, what we talked about was, what about the people that bought those 8 homes thinking they were going to be moving into a development with 20, and they saw the big plan, and they saw what this development was supposed to look like, and now they're stuck with all these empty lots or whatever it is. So we have some work to do. But now you've got a board of commissioners that are really looking at that and seeing how are the policies and things that we've had, how are those good for the county, and how do we need to change some things. And so that's why I say it's my really objective is to have our county commissioners set the policy for those things, and then let our staff go ahead and do the work.
Is it going to be within your authority to change that?
Yes, we can work on that.
Is that right?
Yeah, we can do that. Yes,
I have a question. I'm not suggesting that you do this or that we do this, but is there anything in place or any system whereby a moratorium, if you so chose, could be put in place?
And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, that's come up. People have asked about that. I think there, so I don't know. But I do think if you look at, and we've asked for that, I want to know how many permits are approved. What's in the pipeline?
Yes.
I understand it's in the thousands, you know? And so you need to look at that and look at the adequate public facilities ordinance and say, if those happen, can we handle them? So I think that's the way you do it, is you get people looking at that and saying, you may have that development, but we don't have the roads for that, we don't have the schools for that. And that also means the county commissioners working closer with the board, with the planning commission. And I'll be meeting with the president of the county planning commission soon and develop that relationship. We're not permitted, nor is it our intent to interfere with their job. They have a job to do, but we do need to have a relationship with them. So I think there are ways to really be just smart about how you do it, and I don't know that that would be an option. Yeah, because I don't know about the constitutionality of that and all that kind of stuff. And you have to be sensitive to looking at some of these folks that are developing it have put a lot of money up to a certain point. So I'm very sensitive to that, and we've got to be considerate of that as well. So, but our plans look at the whole picture, not just, piecemeal. So, yeah. Virginia, you had your hand up too.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, are there any other counties in the state that have the same situation we do in Charles County that would help solve some of the problems we might have here?
Well, you mean that are doing things differently or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, there are. I mean, obviously, Calvert County has a very different land use plan than Charles County does, but Calvert County also has a nuclear power plant, and they've got things like that. So they get a lot of income. So certainly we look around and look, and we've got a great staff that does that too, to see how's it going here and what's working. But unfortunately, counties are really unique. Charles County, and that's why we find ourselves where we are today. I've heard this all the time in terms of our taxes and so forth. The history of Charles County has really been residential. Just build houses, approve developments, build houses. That's been the way it's worked. The unfortunate thing about that is that for every house we build, it costs us more in services than we get in taxes. So every house built costs us money. And the main way we get money is we raise taxes. That's how we have to get our revenue. We need to flip that a little bit and look at that and say, what do we need to do to bring in more commercial manufacturing, whatever, to help balance that out. But that's going to take some time. But so, we can, and we are unique in that sense. You can look at Prince George's County. They've got the National Harbor, they've got the MGM, they have different things. You look at Montgomery County, that it has, all the commercial stuff like that. So we don't have that. We've never had really an aggressive, that has not been the way of operating in Charles County for a long time. It's our hope to start moving that a little bit, but as they tell me, it's like turning the Queen Mary. You just don't do this. It's going to take us. But I think we can try to start the policy differently and get, regardless of who the next board is, that people really are buy into that and move it forward. But we've got to, the whole thing is looking for balance. That's the key to this.
Well, my daughter lives in Anne Arundel County, and she told me that her county is trying to build more places for people, like seniors and like that, rather than people with kids and families where you need more schools, so they're trying to balance it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of ways to do it, and I think the richest, the most vibrant community takes all those into consideration, the community is for everybody, and so it's how do you find ways for everybody to live and enjoy this county, and we're going to look at that too. So. Anything else? I kind of blathered on here, but I really do appreciate your
I'd like to congratulate you on some of the selections somebody's made for the planning commission. I think it's going to be functioning much better.
Good. Well, and thank you, Jewel. And let me tell you, in terms of depoliticizing, because I got some blowback on that. Certain people have my home email and my cell phone and stuff like that. But I'm going to tell you that we did this in a very different way this year. One of the things is, just so you know how we're trying to change government here in Charles County, so you can be really proud of what we're doing. And this gets back to my depoliticizing things. I went to the staff first, to the Planning Growth Management, and I said to them, what kind of people do you want on the Planning Commission? Because you're the ones that deal with them every day. So what can we do to help you have people that you can communicate better with? Do you want lawyers? Do you want surveyors? Do you want realtors? Do you want what do you want? And they said, well, they couldn't really say because how do you do that? But they said, but here's what you can do. What we would like to do is, if it's possible, for those people that apply, we would like to meet with them first and tell them what's required in this job, in this volunteer. And because I'm a great believer in people self-selecting, and so rather than us telling people yes or no, let people self-select so that they can go and say, well, gee, that's not what I understood it to be, so I'm backing out. But that's their choice, but give them that information up front. The second thing is, by law, they're required to take a class, a course online. Well, the way it's been in the past, they've been appointed, they didn't take that, and then once they're appointed, they don't take it. So what we did is we made it part of the application process that you had to take that course before you could, as part of your application. That was self-selecting. So when it came down to select the members of the Planning Commission, we were only given those people that completed that course and completed an application. Because I felt if they were interested enough to take that class, that's a good first step. If they weren't even interested, they're not going to show up to meetings. So what happened was, everybody was given the same ones. I just said to people, these are the only ones that are qualified. You go off, just pick the 2 or 3 or whatever that you want to interview. Everybody came back. We just went round and round. This one, and the people that just had the most votes, those were the people that came and were interviewed. And out of that, it's by consensus. We do not vote on those appointments. It's what is the consensus of the board. So that way, it really did take out, any favoritism or any of that kind of stuff, because it really gave people an opportunity to try to bring forward people that they thought, because a lot of people I don't know, so I'm not in a position to make those judgments, and neither do some of the others. So that process worked really well, and I agree with you. I think what we got are some really people who are determined, they're committed, and it's a nice balanced board. So and that's the way we're doing our boards this time. We're not doing any, it's not somebody's turn to appoint somebody or whatever that. I know this just doesn't work, and that's not fair. So we're making those changes. So that's how that happened. And thank you. And I think it's a good board, and we're looking forward to it. They've got a lot ahead of them. As you may or may not know, the comprehensive plan has been sent to the state. However, there's a piece of it, and as you may or may not know, and I'll let you go, I can talk forever because I just love this stuff. The thing is that the way the comprehensive plan is today, we the county commissioners can only accept or reject it.
Right.
We cannot weigh in on it. However, there's a piece of legislation, I don't know where it is today, but it looked like it was moving through, that will change, that will give county commissioners an opportunity. And we're one of the few counties that doesn't do that. Other counties do allow that will be able to actually make recommendations and so forth. So if that's the case, it's going to require that we have a relationship with our planning commission. That's why I'm starting to work with the chairman and so forth. Okay? So I look forward to that group. Okay. All right, I'm done. Thank you all very, very much.